Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my version 3.0 mock draft 2026. This is a predictive mock draft of what I expect to happen in the upcoming NFL draft in April up in Pittsburgh. My name is Simon Erickson. I am the founder and CEO of Seven Investing. That's my day job. This is actually just a fun thing that I've enjoyed is following football since I was 7 years old, more than 35 years ago. I'm a lifelong New Orleans Saints fan, but I do draw a lot of connections between investing in the stock market and football, especially for the draft. So that's why I do this. This is all just for fun for me. But if you do want to check out 7investing.com, that's where I can justify making these fun videos. I'm going to fire up the PFF mock draft simulator. This is something that is now we're at February 3rd, so we're 3 days past the Panini Senior Bowl. We are 1 day past Groundhog Day, and we are 1 week out from the Super Bowl. So I feel like this is probably the right time to have some fun and put together a third version of the mock draft. So that mind, let's pull this up. Let's get up the screen up here for the predictive 3.0 mock draft, again, using the mock draft simulator here with PFF. You're able to see the screen in my background. We're only going to go about a minute on each of these and keep them short and sweet. That's going to be a first round only mock. So on the clock, the Raiders at number 1 are going to take Fernando Mendoza. This is not even in need of discussion right now. They might hear some calls on what the offer might look like, but I cannot imagine a world where they do not take Fernando number 1. We're just going to go with that right now and book it on the first pick. The draft starts at number 2 with the Jets. The Jets really are trying to rebuild their offense. We are certain that is why they traded Sauce and Quinnen Williams this last year. But I do not think that there is an offensive player that warrants being taken at number 2. And I'm going to go with who I believe is the biggest playmaker on the defensive front, which is Ruben Bain Jr. I think they're going to franchise tag Breece Hall in the offseason. I think they're going to bring in a bridge quarterback as well. And that's going to free them up to take the best player available. I think that Ruben Bain is a much more sure thing than Arvell Reese here at number 2. This is one, again, that I see Reese going a lot to the Jets. I'm going to disagree with the consensus on that one. I think that you're going to take Ruben Bain, and that makes the most sense for the Jets at number 2. Cardinals at number 3. This is, in my opinion, a no-brainer pick. You've got to take an offensive lineman. It's high to take an offensive lineman at 3, especially with this class, but it simply does not make sense for you to go out there and try to the open market where there's not a whole lot of really good options available anyway, because teams like to lock down their best offensive players for the offensive line anyhow. The Cardinals do want to take a quarterback. I don't think it makes any sense to take Ty Simpson at number 3. Way too early for him. I think it's more likely that they're going to trade Kyler in the offseason, probably to the Jets. They've got the cap space to pick up the rest of his contract. I think they're going to take a bridge quarterback, if not run, with their existing Jacoby Brissett as QB right now. But I think that it makes sense to take Francis Mauigoa, the right tackle out of Miami. I mean, this is a team that went all the way to the college football championship. He was a big reason why. Hardly gave up any sacks. He's the right side defender that you're going to need no matter who's under center of the Cardinals. It only makes sense at number 3. You could trade down if you want to, but this is the best pick for them, even if it's early for an offensive lineman. So Mauigoa number 3 to the Cardinals. That brings us to the Titans at number 4. We've got Robert Saleh coming in as the new head coach there. He's had a couple stints as the head coach of the Jets. Then he was the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. I think this is a perfect landing spot for Arvell Reese to go to the Titans. If you remember seeing what Saleh was doing when he was at San Francisco, he really liked to have a strong 4-3 front for the defensive line. And then he would have his linebackers do the blitzing to put heat on the opposing quarterbacks, just like what he did with Fred Warner in San Francisco. I think that's a perfect fit for what Arvell Reese has shown that he's capable of doing in Ohio State. A very versatile player, as somebody that can line up and down. People are assuming that he's going to be an edge if you're taking him here at number 4. I actually think the Titans and Saleh especially are going to be a little bit more creative and run him up and down the defensive line, especially as a middle linebacker as well. So see a lot of versatility from Arvell Reese. I think he's a good fit for the Titans at number 4. Number 5, we've got the New York Giants. This is another one that could go a lot of different places because people are saying, okay, Harbaugh's in there. Harbaugh likes to be in the trenches. Maybe he's going to go for an offensive lineman. I think Jermaine Illuminor did just fine this last year. I was critical of him in the previous year, but I think they're going to re-sign him at right tackle. I think that they're going to now go after what they consider to be the best player available. And again, they've got a little bit of money in cap space right now. They could re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson, who's kind of their wide receiver 2, to complement Malik Neighbors if they wanted to. Or they could let him walk and they could draft a wide receiver in this draft. I'm not sure where they're going to address that. But I think that knowing Harbaugh and what he built with the Baltimore Ravens, I think John Harbaugh is going to go after the best player available here. Just like the Ravens always took the best player that was available on the board. I have been critical of this pick in the past. I didn't think it was going to happen. The more I look at it, the more that I stare at what the board is showing us right now, and the more that I think of what Harbaugh wants to do, I do think he's going to take the best defensive player to fix the secondary of the Giants. I think they're going to go with Caleb Downs here at number 5. I know, timeout. It's too early to take a box safety, right? Okay, it's too early to take a position that's not an edge rusher or an offensive tackle or a quarterback at number 5. But just looking at the other options that we have here, Jeremiah Love, Jordan Tyson, even maybe David Bailey, maybe Tate, there's a lot of these have been discussed for the Giants. But I really just think if you get a really locked down defensive general of your secondary, even if it's at number 5, that's a little bit early, I think that kind of frees up Harbaugh to do a lot of other things. Jackson Dart showed a lot of promise. You get Scotabo back, in the backfield. In year 2, you've got Malik Neighbors now healthy back, and in his 3rd year now. I think this is kind of where you want to see the Giants going, is taking the best player available and then build around Harbaugh as he sees opportunities throughout the offseason and throughout the season. I'm taking Caleb Downs, probably the best player in this draft, going at number 5 to the Giants. Again, I've been critical and hesitant to do this in the past. I'm much more comfortable doing it now. Number 6, we've got the Browns. Cleveland Browns have got to address their offensive line first and foremost. There is absolutely no world where you can take a skill player or a wide receiver without locking down this offensive line. You've got 4 players who are either going to have lapsing contracts and hit the free agent market or potentially just retire from the offensive line. That is too much to try to address in free agency, especially as they've got one more year on Deshaun Watson's contract. So they don't have any money to spend anyway. You absolutely have to have a dependable and reliable tackle with your first pick here at number 4. You can't roll the dice on this one. You got to take Spencer Fano, the tackle out of Utah, with that 6th pick. It only makes sense for the Cleveland Browns. They can address the skill positions later on in the draft, especially their 2nd pick of the 1st round. We move on to the Commanders. Washington at number 7. This is a pick that you kind of want to have a defensive playmaker. Dan Quinn is going to want to draft an edge rusher. I do think Sonny Styles, though, is also on the board here for them. I think that would be really interesting to pair him up with Frankie Louvu, right in the middle of the linebacker ranks. You want somebody that can run sideline to sideline, put some youth in this defense, which is getting really old right now. But I think that with David Bailey available there at number 7, I think you have to take this guy. He's a designated pass rusher in many people's minds. I don't think he's only playing 3rd down and putting heat on the quarterback. I think that he's actually a playmaker that can stuff the run. He's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the length, and he's got the versatility. And then on top of that, he's got every pass rush move in the book. This is the guy that the Commanders have really been needing, I think, for that defense. It's getting older. I think it's kind of a no-brainer to take Paley if he's there at number 7. To my beloved New Orleans Saints here at number 8. Again, this is a pick that could go a variety of different ways. In fact, most of the mocks that I've seen, even from the NFL.com insiders, are putting Jeremiah Love to the Saints right here. They say, hey, Tyler Shuck, number 2 year for him, sophomore year development. You want to give him a reliable running back. I disagree. I think that Alvin Kamara, being in the final year of his contract, he's slated to make, I believe, $15 million this year here in 2026. Didn't really shine, didn't actually do much of anything in 2025. But I think if the Saints are wise, they're going to use him as the bell cow, as a running back for the offense for this last year in his contract. There's no reason to pay him $15 million to have him sit on the bench, even if Love does have upside. And still, I think that 8 is way too early for a running back anyway. With the exception last year of the Raiders taking Ashton Genty, I just don't see a need to take a running back in the top 10 pick. And so that aside, the Saints, I think, are going after a wide receiver here. I think that Shuck has shown a lot of promise in that first year. Chris Olave has some concussion and injury concerns. You're going to want to pair him up with a second receiver, which brings us down to Jordan Tyson as the favorite. But I'm going to go with Mekhi Lemon here in the 8th pick for the Saints. I think this is the speedy slot receiver that's going to fit perfectly in the second read that Shuck is going to have, right there between 10 and 15 yards. Look for a receiver who's going to create some separation, move the chains, and keep that offense, humming along. I think that this guy plays a lot bigger than his size. He's only 5'11", about 195 pounds. But the guy plays a lot bigger than that. If you watch his tape, it's amazing. I would love to see this guy go to the Saints. Even though some might say this is too early for Mekhi Lemon at number 8, I'm locking it in. He's the guy that I want as the playmaker of my New Orleans Saints at number 8. The Kansas City Chiefs at number 9. Again, this is another controversial pick. A lot of people saying, oh, it's got to be Jeremiah Love, right? It's got to be Jeremiah Love. We know that Patrick Mahomes had an injury last year. We know that they're more reliant on the RPO, the run-pass option, offensive scheme. They've taken away the deep ball threat, both with Tyreek Hill not there anymore and also defenses running too deep to lock down those big plays that Mahomes wants to do. That forces him to throw kind of shorter or intermediate passes or rely on a running back, which is why Love makes sense here. But I just don't see it. I just don't see Andy Reid drafting a running back with that 9th pick. My brain refuses to let me believe that a team that has got, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, who are both either people they brought in, as free agents or late round draft picks. I just don't see the Chiefs taking Love in the first round here at number 9. Maybe if they were at 16 or 17, I could see it. But I think they've got much bigger needs on this team. I think they're going to go after a free agent in the offseason, potentially somebody like Breece Hall if he doesn't get franchise tagged at the Jets. Maybe Kenneth Walker from the Seahawks would be a good fit here for the Chiefs. We know they need a running back. I don't think that they're going to be drafting here one with Love. Instead, I'm going to go down the board a little bit. This is going to be one that is another controversial pick in this mock, but I'm going to go all the way down here to Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle out of Florida. This guy is a machine. He is built in a lab to be a defensive lineman. 6'6", I believe, 330 pounds. He was injured for a lot of last year with a foot injury. But when this guy is out there on the field, he is a game-wrecking monster. And just imagine putting him right next to Chris Jones on that Chiefs front line. We know that Spags likes those really powerful defensive linemen who are not only able to, go after the quarterback and also stop the run. Chris Jones has needed a player right next to him for years for the Chiefs to be effective. And while I see a lot of options on the board that are available right here, I just think that Banks, even though he's farther down on this big board, for PFF, I think he's a natural fit there for what the Chiefs would want in that 9th pick. So again, I think that you're going after kind of a free agent for the running back that is necessary out there. I think that when you're looking for a really powerful guy who is very productive, every play you saw him on the field, it's going to be Caleb Banks. And we see his raw power and his physical tools, getting some really good defensive line coaching and lining him right next to Chris Jones on the Chiefs defensive line. This is a game changer that I think the Chiefs would really love to take at number 9, Caleb Banks out of Florida. The Bengals at number 10, again, another pick that could go anywhere. You could definitely justify Sonny Styles to be the middle linebacker who's the general of this defense. The Bengals cannot tackle a running back or a tight end to save their lives right now. It seems like a middle linebacker might be a good fit for that, but you did have Demetrius Knight coming in, just 1 year ago. He still needs to show some development, but I think they've got him kind of locked in as the starter for the middle line and interior linebacker. Instead, with the Bengals, I'm going to go back to something that I think that I was mocking several months ago, which is Peter Woods, defensive lineman out of Clemson. Again, I had a tough year. We know that Clemson had a bad year just in general. A lot of their defensive players digressed this year. Woods, to me, still looks pretty good. He's not a tree stump that just sits in the middle and soaks up double teams. He's more of a brawler that's able to move in space a little bit better. That's going to be really effective against the run, but they're also going to get some pass rushing from him as well, which will probably be very necessary, being that Trey Hendrickson is going to be leaving during the offseason. So Peter Woods out of Clemson, I've made this mock. I mocked him to the Bengals several months ago. I then got interested in kind of putting different players on the Bengals roster instead. I'm going to bring him back and pick him to Cincinnati at number 10. The Dolphins at number 11. Again, this is another one that could go a bunch of different directions, but goodness gracious, if you watch any Miami tape this last year or any of the games that the Dolphins were playing, they were just getting destroyed in the passing game, right? It was just, consistently 250, 350, maybe 300, more than 300 yards that opposing quarterbacks would be dishing out, and the Dolphins would be giving up. They absolutely have to address the secondary here. You do have Minka Fitzpatrick, from the trade with Ramsey that you had there with the Steelers. You've got a decent safety. You simply have no cornerback depth whatsoever. And Mansour Delane from LSU, this is a guy that was just a lockdown corner all year. It was really hard for opposing quarterbacks to throw against him because he just was up in the face of every receiver that he was playing against. I think he's a natural fit for the Dolphins. I think there's a lot of discussion on where they could go with this because they've got a lot of needs. Tua certainly is not the Tua that we saw in years past. Tyreek Hill with his injury, probably out. They might look for another receiver, but I think Mansour Lane is the safest pick for the biggest need. I have him going to the Miami Dolphins at number 11. At number 12, the Dallas Cowboys. Again, this is another pick that I'm going to revert back to, that I changed directions here recently, but I'm going back to the well again and going with what I think is the most sense to draft Sonny Styles, the linebacker general, the defense out of Ohio State. I mean, the guy is a machine, played safety and then transitioned to linebacker after he put on some weight. He can run sideline to sideline. The Cowboys need to fix their defense. Gave up a league worst 30 points a game this last year. Sonny Styles is immediately going to fix that. I think he's going to be the first of 2 defensive picks that the Cowboys are going to take in the first round of this year. So Styles goes number 12 to the Cowboys. That brings us to the Rams at number 13. Thank you to the Atlanta Falcons, who they made the trade with last year and inherited this pick. It's unusual to have a team that almost made the Super Bowl getting a pick this high, but the Rams are just thrilled to be picking here at number 13. It frees them up to take the best player available. I think that's Tremont McCoy right here. Tremont McCoy, of course, injured with the ACL tear all year. We haven't seen him play a single game in college. In 2025, the year before that, his tape was fantastic. He is a lockdown press cover, has got fluid hips. He can run with the field with any receiver out there. He's the lockdown CB1 that the Rams have been missing ever since they lost Ramsey years ago. McVay has been looking for a replacement first cornerback. And the Rams, I mean, if you're competing in the NFC West like they are, this is a pass-happy division. You have to have better cornerback play than the Rams showed all year. If you just watch their games, you'd be just frustrated to see them giving up big plays time and time again. McCoy, this is pending that he gets a good review from the doctors. They sign off that saying this is not going to be a huge re-injury risk from him. It is a little bit risky even taking him at 13, but I think the Rams are desperate at cornerback. And with Delane already off the board, it simply makes sense for them. He probably would have been a top 5 or top 10 pick any other year. McCoy goes number 13 to the Rams. It brings us to the Ravens at number 14. Again, this is one that you could see a defensive line. We did see them re-sign Travis Jones, the defensive tackle here recently, to a 3-year extension. You could see them go after a wide receiver if you wanted to bring somebody else for Lamar to air it out to out there. But in my opinion, I think that the Ravens really have got to protect Lamar. You cannot give your franchise quarterback and a multiple NFL MVP player any kind of risk of re-injuring himself again this year. He's got the offseason to get healthy again. We certainly did not see him playing at peak performance in 2025. You want to get Lamar back and healthy, and Daniel Falele at right guard has really struggled. I think you're going interior offensive line. That's where Vega fits in. Olave Vega, Ioane, best interior offensive lineman in this draft. Penn State hardly gave up any sacks at all during his starter time of his collegiate career. I think you plug him in at right guard immediately, knowing that he can fill a couple different positions if you need him to, if you have any injuries in that offensive line. But he's going to be a starting right guard for the Ravens. And I think at 14, that's the right place in the draft for the first guard to come off the board, right? Tyler Booker last year when he went to the Cowboys. This is kind of where you start seeing those interior offensive linemen. It's fair game to start taking them around 14. So that's what I see the Ravens doing there. 15, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to trade this pick. I know, the first trade of the draft is going to come at 15. I see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jason Licht, their general manager, who's famous for trading down picks, right? He does this quite often. If he doesn't have a player that he sees that's right there staring him in the face, he's going to trade down and compile more top 100 picks. And I think in this case, we're going to go up here and make a trade. We are going to go with the Buccaneers trading pick number 15 to none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are on the clock next at number 21. I think the Steelers are going to trade number 21 and pick number 76, which they inherited from Dallas, and pick number 85 to Tampa Bay for number 15. It makes sense on the value chart in terms of the value of those picks. You get 3 top 100 picks for just one. Tampa Bay wants more defensive playmakers. And so I think that's where they're going to move the Pittsburgh Steelers up to number 15, because Pittsburgh, with a new head coach coming in, is going to see they need a second wide receiver to complement DK Metcalf. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers under center or whether it's a new quarterback coming in, you've got to have some targets for him. If you watch the games last year, Metcalf was great, but you need a second target. And look who's sitting there still on the board at number 15. It's Jordan Tyson, who's going to go to the Steelers with this pick. I just think that if the opportunity is there and the Buccaneers are willing to trade down, which they are, it only makes sense for Pittsburgh to move up right here, take Jordan Tyson. Yes, you're taking on the injury risk, but this is probably the only true wide receiver one in the entire draft class. Pairing him up with DK Metcalf for the Steelers only makes a lot of sense to me. So that's the first trade of the first round. Steelers moving up to 15 for Tyson, brings us back to the Jets. This is another inherited pick, the one that they got from Indianapolis Colts. I think that if you see Reuben Bain go at number 2, the Jets are also going to be looking to take a wide receiver with this pick. You'd love to have Garrett Wilson have a running mate there for whoever's under center, probably a bridge quarterback here in 2026. And look who's still available at number 16. It's Carnell Tate. I think he's overrated. I don't mean to disrespect Carnell Tate. He's a great player. But when you've got him lined up, with Jeremiah Smith already in that Ohio State offense, Smith is going to be grabbing all the attention of the top cornerback of the opposing teams. It's freed Tate up to basically run downfield 20 yards, catch the ball because he's really tall, 6'3", a big-bodied receiver. He doesn't drop passes. He's got great, hands, but he doesn't do much after the catch. They throw it to him 20 yards down the field. He catches it. If he's in the end zone, great, have the touchdown. If he's not, he probably goes out of bounds or falls down. And it works for Ohio State, but I don't think he's a top 5 pick in this draft where you're going to be up against much, much more difficult competition, and you're not necessarily going to have all of the coverage going to your other receiver on the team. I do think this makes sense at 16 for the Jets, though. They're looking for a wide receiver. Tate is right there on the board after Tyson gets taken by the Steelers. And so I think the Jets, if you're going to want to add some offensive firepower, they could do a lot worse than this pick. I think Tate makes a lot of sense at 16. The Detroit Lions at number 17. This is another one of my favorite player and team pairings of the entire first round. It's going to be Caleb Lomu, the left tackle out of Utah. We know that Taylor Decker from the Lions has been banged up. He's considering retirement. Dan Skipper, who was their swing tackle, who played a lot of left tackle for them last year, has officially retired. And so you've got the Lions now that are just going to need offensive tackle support, right? You're running out of guys out there. And so it's really the right time for this really physical zone blocking offensive line to bring in another left tackle. Lomu fits the bill for this one too. He's not the strongest tackle in the draft. This is not a guy like Caden Proctor is out of Alabama. He's still got to gain some weight and put on some strength, but he's really good technique. He's got great feet. And here's the key. He's a good zone blocking tackle. Why does that matter? Well, because Detroit really loves to have a wide zone blocking scheme. You want to open up those lanes for Jahmyr Gibbs, who's one of the fastest players in the league. And Penei Sewell has done fantastic on the right-hand side. You add another zone blocking left tackle like Caleb Lomu, and all of a sudden you've got a dominant offensive line for the Lions who love to run the ball. Number 18, the Vikings. Run this card in immediately. You see Jeremiah Love still there at number 18, when many are projecting him to be a top 10 pick in this draft. Only makes sense for J.J. McCarthy to all of a sudden have a burst, an impactful playmaker right behind him as a running back. That's gonna take a lot of burden off of his shoulders. He's obviously going to be a good player in this league. He's going to be a very good quarterback in this league, but he needs more time to develop, and it needs to be a running back that can command the respect of linebackers in the front 7 of the defense. If you've got Love there, that's going to immediately take a lot of heat off him. They're not just going to be blitzing him every single play or pass rushing him all the time. It's going to command the respect of the linebackers and really open up McCarthy to do a lot more things with his really capable wide receiver. So Jeremiah Love, number 18 to the Vikings, probably one of the fastest decisions that were made in the first round. The Panthers, number 19. This is an interesting pick too. I could see this one going a bunch of different ways. Because the Panthers, you could see them going after an edge rusher. You could see them going after a defensive lineman. You could see them going after another wide receiver to complement Tetairoa McMillan that they drafted last year. You could see them going after a tight end. Kenyon Sadiq is still on the board. They need a good tight end that's going to be more productive for them. But in my mind, knowing what the Panthers want to do, which is a team that wants to be physical, I think they're going to see Keldrick Falk right there at 19 and say, absolutely, we're taking this guy. Not only is Falk a really good cultural player, he brings it. He's got a nonstop motor. He's a guy that's going to change the defensive mindset and be a leader of this team. But you put him right next to Derek Brown, another top 10 pick right there on the defensive line. And you put this guy who's 6'6", what is he, 280 pounds? He's got the juice to rush the passer, but also stop the run. I mean, the Panthers in years past gave up way too many points and way too many rushing yards. I think he's immediately going to kind of help Brown reshape that defensive line and put a lot of heat on their opponents, especially in my own Saints there in the NFC South. So I like Falk going to the Panthers. Again, there's a lot of different directions they could go. I don't think they're going after an edge rusher because they picked 2 of them last year in the second round. But this makes a lot of sense to take Falk, number 19, to the Panthers. Brings us back to the Cowboys, number 20. Dallas is back up. We gave them in the first pick at number 12, Sonny Styles as a linebacker. This is going to be another defensive pick for them. I think Avion Terrell is only going to make sense. This is a zone coverage cornerback out of Clemson. He's very good. He can cover the field. He can defense passes and knock them down. He can force fumbles. He's very good at contributing against the run, which is going to get you a lot of gold stars from Jerry Jones. The Cowboys really are going to need a lot of help in the secondary. Again, giving up 30 points a game. You saw them bring in Quinn Williams from the Jets, but you also saw them lose Micah Parsons. We added Sonny Styles as the first pick. We're going to add Avion Terrell as the second pick here in the first round. And I think this is going to be kind of a much better Cowboys defense in 2026 than we saw this last year. So back to the Buccaneers, who, a reminder, traded the 15th pick to the Steelers so they can move up for Jordan Tyson. The Bucs are back up again at number 21. This is where Kenyon Sadiq is going to go off the board. Kenyon Sadiq, a natural fit for the Buccaneers offense and what they need right now. Baker last year was peppering their tight end Cade Otton with targets all year long, but he's hitting free agency. I do not expect them to re-sign him. Mike Evans, I think, is also going to be leaving as a free agent. Hard for many people to believe. He's been a Buck for life. Kind of their big-bodied wide receiver, but I don't expect them to re-sign him, especially with the injuries that he had last year. Chris Godwin is in the middle of a contract, but he's also been injury-prone. I think that Baker just needs a reliable target down the field. And a safety valve like Kenyon Sadiq could be, in addition to the run blocking that he offers too, and the versatility, we could line him up in a couple different positions, not just as tight end. That's kind of the offensive playmaker I think that the Bucs need right now. We're going to send him to Tampa Bay after they trade down to number 21. 22, we're going to the Chargers. This is going to have to be an offensive lineman, right? We're now looking at another Harbaugh. We're looking at Jim Harbaugh here, a guy who loves powerful maulers on the offensive line and does a gap blocking scheme. Right? This is not a zone-heavy scheme like you see the offensive linemen of the Detroit Lions doing. The Chargers want these massive offensive linemen. The Joe Alts of the world, the Rashawn Slaters of the world. They even brought in Mekhi Becton, from the Jets and the Eagles to be a guard for them last year. They want these massive human beings who are just going to plow over the defensive lineman in front of them. And so immediately, from my description of this, you know exactly where I'm going to be going with this pick, right? This is going to be Caden Proctor out of Alabama, the man who is between 360 and 380 pounds, depending on the day. Probably going to lose a little bit of weight, but he is a massive human being, and he is in his best when he's just running over the guy in front of him. Not great on screens, not great on zone blocking, but I think for a fit for the Chargers, you're going to move him inside either to replace Zion Johnson on the left or replace Mekhi Becton on the right. Both of those guards have been dreadful, and Justin Herbert took way too many hits this last year. So the Chargers are going to take Caden Proctor right there at number 22. Harbaugh's going to love this guy from day one. He'll be a starter on the offensive line. To the Eagles at number 23, Philadelphia loves to replenish their defensive line in the first round. That's why you get guys like Jordan Davis. That's why you guys get guys like Jalen Carter. This is a team that likes to spend its money in bringing in wide receivers and offensive playmakers, Saquon Barkley included, in free agency or through trades, but it likes to draft in the trenches of the defensive line or the defensive secondary. And we've seen that time and time again. It works really, really well for them. They have a deep pipeline. Even if it's not an immediate need this year, if you have that pipeline where it never gets old and you never have to draft or make a trade for a defensive line because you've got somebody else that's waiting in the wings, it just works well for them. So I think Philadelphia is going to look for a really big defensive lineman, 4'3", a powerful rusher that's going to run right over the tackles. To me, this is a natural pick. We're going to stretch a little bit down the board, not at the top of the PFF big board, but we're going to come down here to Akeem Mesidor, the edge out of Miami. Again, another really big defensive lineman, about 280 pounds, lined up with Reuben Bain out there at Florida, at Miami, Florida, brought them all the way to the national championship game in the college football playoff. He's a little older. We always talk about he's going to be 25 years old in his first year. I think that actually makes him more pro-ready, being that he's got a little bit more years under his belt and a little bit more experience. I think that's the perfect fit for what the Eagles want to do, knowing that they've got powerful 4'3" defensive linemen. Mesidor is going to make a lot of sense going to Philadelphia. They're at 23. We're back to the Browns again at 24. Again, we had them taking at number 6, Spencer Fano, the right tackle. I think that you're going to go after an offensive playmaker at this point. Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington, is staring at them right here. It's the natural fit. You've got to compliment. You got to have a better wide receiver than just Jerry Jeudy on this team, right? He's fine. Judy's a wide receiver too, but he's not just the guy that you can throw to and be reliable when you need him to be reliable. I think that's what Boston's going to be. He reminds me a lot of Rome Odunze, not just because of the Washington connection, but he's also got the size. He's got the hands. You know, assuming that Shedeur is still going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns next year, you want just a big-bodied receiver because Shedeur is a pocket passer. He's got pretty good accuracy. You just want somebody that's going to be reliable when you throw him where he's supposed to be in the routes. And knowing that Deshaun Watson's contract is going to lapse in 2027, that will give the Browns a little bit more offensive firepower they can put to work if they want to go after a quarterback or they want to go after more offensive playmakers in the following season after this one. So Boston, number 24, as the X receiver going to the Browns. To number 25, this is yet another player-team pairing I really love. We're going with Caden McDonald, the nose tackle out of Ohio State, going to the Bears. The statistic that I have here, the Bears gave up 5 yards per carry to opponents last year. Not surprising. Look where you are. You're in the NFC North. You're going up against the Lions and the Packers and the Vikings. These are teams that love to run the rock, and they've got really strong offensive lines. So how are you going to pair up against them? Not just with more edge rushers to put heat on the quarterbacks. You've got to have somebody right in the middle to clog the rushing lanes. That's exactly what Caden McDonald does. This is an inglorious, not glorious position. You know, when you're just right there in the middle, you're being the tree stump that's soaking up double teams. As a nose tackle, you've got flexibility on either side to stop the rush. That's what Caden McDonald's going to do. It's exactly what the Bears need. It's worthy of taking in the first round here at number 25. 26 to the Buffalo Bills. This is going to be another big reach for the first round, in my opinion. We're not going to go after the Cassius Howells or the TJ Parkers or even the Casey Concepcions right here. You know, those fall higher on the board, the big board of the PFF simulator here. But I'm going to come down here quite a little bit. In fact, I'm going to put in that we're looking for a wide receiver because I want an X that if I'm Josh Allen, I can throw the ball to, and that receiver is going to be able to go up and get it. Josh Allen's got a fantastic arm. We know that. It's a cannon. He wants to throw the ball 40 or 50 yards downfield and have somebody just right there on the sideline that's able to make this catch. And that's Chris Brazel, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. 6'5", you know, NFL bloodline, big-bodied X receiver. This is kind of out of all those receivers I see on the board, the best fit for what you want Josh Allen to be, right? He's the big down-the-field receiver, air it out, get a bunch of yardage, move the chains. You don't need Casey Concepcion. You don't need another slot, a speedy slot receiver. You already got those in this offense. But I think that Chris Brazel from Tennessee is a nice fit for Buffalo here at number 26. Moving on to the 49ers at 27. That is, I think, where Casey Concepcion comes off the board. They are in need of receiver help as well. Deebo Samuels is already gone. He already went to the Commanders a year ago. We assume that Juwan Jennings is going to be gone as a free agent. We assume that Brandon Aiyuk has played his last snap as a 49er and is going to be gone. And now on top of that, George Kittle is on injured reserve. The 49ers have to pick somebody. They do not have a whole lot of salary cap flexibility to go out there and draft people, bring in free agents during the offseason. They probably still are going to pick somebody up, but I expect it to be kind of a wide receiver 2, maybe a wide receiver 3 even. Purdy just needs another target out there. Concepcion is kind of the speedy slot receiver. He can do a lot of things. He's kind of a gadget player. He could also return punts or even kickoff returns if you need him to. But I think it makes sense for the 49ers simply because they need somebody to catch the ball. They're running out of players on offense this year. Number 28, back to my hometown Houston Texans. I really think you're going after a offensive lineman here at Ingram. Gave up a lot of sacks last year. What was it? Officially 4 sacks, I believe, and he's now a free agent. Yep, 4 sacks. He's going to be a free agent here in 2026. I think you've got to plug somebody into the right guard. CJ Stroud, man, such a good player, such a fantastic quarterback. Took way too much heat because he had some bad moments in the playoffs. But I'm going to stand by him. I mean, this is the quarterback of your future. He can shake it off. He can bounce back. He's got a short-term memory for bad plays that he made. But you got to give this guy better protection. Just like so many Texans quarterbacks in the past, you take too much heat, you take too many sacks, it really removes your inability to keep your head up and look downfield. You gotta protect CJ Stroud this next year for him to be as productive as possible. So I'm going to go to the interior offensive line. This is right out of the Oregon Ducks. I think that Emmanuel Pregnon is going to be the pick here. Really reliable, really consistent. Hardly gave up a single sack in 3 years at Oregon. He played as a left guard in college. I think they're going to move him to the right side and be the plug-and-play starter at day one for the Houston Texans at number 28. Rounding out the first round, number 29, we're back to the Rams again. Again, a reminder, the Rams at number 13 took Jermon McCoy, the cornerback. This is another one that's going to attract a lot of attention. We'll see what people think about this pick. But I think Ty Simpson makes perfect sense to the Rams here at 29. He declared for the draft this year. He could have stayed in college. He only played a single season in Alabama. And a lot of people were saying he needed to stick around for another year. He might not have been the starting quarterback at Alabama next year. Could have entered the transfer portal, right? Really big heart, football family. Dad was a head coach. Could have been a starting quarterback in his senior year if he wanted to be for another team, if not for Alabama. But he says, I'm coming out into the draft. Why did he do that if there wasn't a team that would be interested in him? In fact, Ty's own father mentioned that he received multiple first-round grades from every NFL general manager that they contacted, which seems to suggest that there was a few teams, more than one, that said to him, hey, if you're available when our first-round pick comes around, we're going to draft you. I assume that means the Steelers, even though I had the Steelers moving up for Jordan Tyson in this pick. This was obviously not a set-in-stone commitment. It's a verbal commitment, the way that it's phrased, at least in the media right now. But assuming there was more than one team that committed this to Ty Simpson, I think it only makes sense for the Rams with their second first-rounder. Matthew Stafford has one more year on the contract. He is playing at a MVP level, and he's going to be the starter again in 2026. But between the back problems that he's been having, the potential injury risk that they've got out there, as well as just Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are the perfect coach and quarterback to learn from. If you're coming into the league early like Ty Simpson would be, you need a year to sit and to develop and start seeing things before you get thrown out there to the woods. This is the perfect landing spot for a player like Ty Simpson. And I think the Rams, who are willing to invest in him, are going to get a payout from this in 2027 and beyond. So Ty Simpson, number 29 to the Rams, brings us to Denver Broncos with pick number 30. Again, an unfortunate injury to Bo Nix this year, which kept them, out of Super Bowl contention here in 2025. But I think they're going to be back there in another deep run to the playoffs in 2026. This is a deep roster. Sean Payton's done a lot of really good things for the Broncos. I think that with CJ Allen right there available as a middle linebacker, kind of a do-it-all, gritty linebacker out of Georgia, I think that's kind of what the Broncos would like to add to this already elite defense. Fantastic defensive line, fantastic edge rushers, fantastic secondary. They would probably like to go after a wide receiver, all other things considered here, but I don't see them going that direction in this draft when there's already been so many wideouts drafted here in the first round. And I don't think Cassius Howell or TJ Parker, even though those are highly productive edge rushers, I think that CJ Allen as a linebacker is a bigger need for the Broncos. And he's going to be the pick for Denver here at number 30. Let's move on to the Patriots at number 31, the Super Bowl contenders. Again, we are filming this before the Super Bowl has taken place, which will be next Sunday. In my opinion, I think the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl, so that puts New England on the clock here at number 31. I think Cassius Howell is a natural fit here right now. People are already, saying, no, he's not a first-round pick. His arms are way too short. That's why he's dropped here to number 31 in the first place. Cassius Howell was extremely productive in his time at A&M, racked up a lot of sacks. And certainly the Patriots don't mind drafting people who are less than ideal arm length. They took Will Campbell as their left tackle, and he's been a fantastic pick at number 4 last year in protecting Drake May. Why wouldn't they do the same thing this year? With Cassius Howell again, 15th ranked on the PFF big board, super productive at A&M. He's going to be a designated pass rusher. He's, kind of the nimble, speedy outside linebacker, but that's going to fit really well into the Patriots scheme. I think that he's going to be the pick for New England there at number 31. That's probably one of the best value picks in the first round. And then finally, what I believe are the Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks at number 32, another elite defense that gets even more elite in this pick. I'm going to go down the board just a little bit. We're going to draft a cornerback here. We're going after Colton Hood, cornerbacker out of Tennessee. Again, right there with Jermon McCoy, another very, very physical lockdown corner, can play zone or man schemes or press schemes a lot of the times too. Big-bodied cornerback. I think that a lot of heat is going to fall on Tariq Woolen, who is going to become a salary cap casualty, so to speak, and leave during free agency this year. Probably left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth too when he rung up that really costly, penalty, unsportsmanlike conduct that he was playing right in the most previous game when they were playing against the Rams. That was costly. Then the very next play, gave up a touchdown too. I don't think a lot of Seahawks fans are going to mind Reek Woolen leaving in offseason in free agency and bringing in a really, really good playmaker like Colton Hood to replace him. And again, this just the Legion of Boom 2.0. I mean, the Seahawks defensive secondary is amazing, absolutely fantastic. And so, if we look with all these picks, I think this is a good one. This is a really good first round, going against consensus in many ways. I've looked at a lot of all the draft coverage that's out there and listened to a lot of podcasts. Like I said, this is something I love to do as a lifetime Saints fan and NFL football fan. But I feel pretty good about a lot of these picks, knowing that there's a lot of turnover with the head coaches and the schemes and the coordinators. I think there's going to be a lot of question marks of what's going to happen here during the offseason, especially as we're coming up on free agency and then getting to the draft in late April up in Pittsburgh. So there we have it. This is my third iteration